Hello, and thank you for joining us. What I'm about to share is some information that we have for all of our groups who go on any kind of overnight trip travel. The information that we're sharing is actually straight off of a trip travel form that you should have in your possession. If you don't already, your coach or your advisor will be getting you one. Please make sure that we have one on file for every student before the trip begins. On that, the only thing that you want to make sure that you do is complete this bottom portion. Just input the trip information, maybe where it's going. For example, volleyball is headed to San Diego, so it would be the trip is San Diego, the student group is volleyball, and then here the date would be whatever date that you're going on. And again, make sure that the parents and students sign off on it. Keep in mind on these trips, this is a school trip and students must stay with the group. Please do not remove yourself or your student from the group without permission from the coach or advisor. Sometimes what we have is trips that maybe go down to like San Diego, and we'll have a parent who says, hey, I want to take my student over to visit UCSD for a little college visit, but it's in the middle of the trip. We want to make sure our students stay with the group, stay with the team for the duration of the trip. And if there's a situation where a student has to be removed by the parent for whatever reason, please make sure that it's okayed with the coach first. Now, on these trips, anyone who attends does represent Beckman and in turn Tustin Unified School District. So all school rules, board policies, and ed code apply for the entirety of the trip. And there's a couple ones that we want to touch on real quick. So the first one relating to drugs and alcohol. Now, any student who's found under the influence of drugs or alcohol are subject to the following consequences here. It is an ed code violation and it is a violation of board policy. So if it's a first offense, students will participate in a drug or alcohol education program, but it may also include a suspension or a recommendation for transfer or potentially a recommendation for expulsion. That depends on the severity of the offense. And then if it's a second offense, if this has happened before, it will definitely include a suspension, may include an involuntary transfer, and could also include expulsion, again, depending on the severity. Now, medication. Medication can be a little bit tricky anytime you have students ingesting pills. That can be a red flag on any trip that we're on. So we want to make sure that the coach or advisor is informed that the student is on medication and that there's a medication administration form on file in our health office. You can stop by school, pick one up, and fill it out. It only takes a couple of minutes. We also have a self-carry contract for students who use an EpiPen, an inhaler, or Benadryl. Again, make sure those are on file if you're going to send your student with any kind of medication. Um, the other thing I want to touch on real quick is some bullying and hazing. In years past, bullying and hazing was a pretty big deal. It was one that occurred on a lot of trips, specifically athletic events and athletic trips. A lot of times upperclassmen would maybe haze the lowerclassmen. And that's one that we want to get away from because over the years, what's been done has turned into, it's crossed some lines and become a safety issue. And so there will be no bullying and hazing allowed on any of these trips. And again, like we said before, any of this that occurs on a trip is subject to school rules, which could mean a suspension or expulsion or transfer, or even just removal from the team. Now, a couple other things to keep in mind. No guests are to be in the student rooms. You may know someone who lives in the area and they come to visit. They are not to be in student rooms. Also, students must be accompanied by a chaperone at all times. This isn't something where the student's hungry and they decide, hey, I'm just going to walk across the street to Taco Bell. That's not an option. Chaperones need to be with and or know where students are at all times. And one of the other things that we have is no swimming unless a certified lifeguard is on duty. And that's just to prevent, or I'm sorry, to avoid any kind of accidents that could occur in a pool area. Now, something for parents and chaperones. So all chaperones need to complete a chaperone packet. Your advisor or coach should have those ready for you. The chaperones do also need to adhere to all the trip travel supervision rules that are outlined in that packet. And again, all chaperones need to stay away from alcohol on the trip, even when they're not around the students, because again, in an emergency, if something comes up and we need a chaperone to help transport a kid, we can't have a chaperone under the influence. And chaperones, if you see any problems, please make sure you report them to the coach or supervisor immediately so that they can handle and address it appropriately. Now, that's really the gist of our conversation today. Thank you. Thank you for being part of our community. Enjoy the trip and good luck in whatever it is that you're doing.